Is it ever okay for a man to hit a woman? Is it justifiable when a woman hits a man? Can a man be a victim or survivor of domestic abuse? We are talking all of these topics and more on today's episode of Chats for Change. Welcome to the show. I'm LaToria Pierce, here with our expert host, Sophie Ford.
LaToria, not only do we have an impactful show in store today, I'm excited to say that the Family Crisis Center of Prince George's County has established a new goal to provide men a safe space where they can interact, gain knowledge, and connect with other men about topics related to domestic violence. Our guests today will be contributing partners and ongoing partners in our efforts.
That's right, and one of those contributors will be ordained minister and expert life coach Rodney Gray. Did you know that 1 in 6 men in their lifetime will be victims of domestic violence? When it comes to domestic abuse, men happen to face a high number of stigmas due to gender. One of those stigmas is that men cannot be victims or survivors, and this is simply not true. The story of Reverned Rodney Gray puts an important spotlight on the fact that men can be victims of domestic violence as well. Listen as Reverend Gray shares his story and gives insight to men out there who may be going through the same experience. So tell us, who was your offender and what types of abuse did you endure?
My offender was my wife at the time, actually. I was very young. I was 20 years old. And it was physical abuse. It was actually physical abuse. I can't really say it was much verbal at all, but it was physical. It was definitely physical, definitely.
Okay. And did anyone else know what you were experiencing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of the things about my situation is she was very indiscriminate with, when she did what she did. So I had friends and family alike that both knew what I was going through at the time. And I think, honestly, that they probably didn't see it as serious as probably they should have.
Yeah.
They probably took their cues from me, in hindsight. And so, not much of a big deal at all was really made about it, honestly.
When did you decide that it was time to speak out and share your experience? And who was the first person that you had the conversation with or that you told, that you let in?
Probably my brother. I'm trying to think when was the first time I said anything. I think he might have actually seen something before I actually had an opportunity to say anything. I honestly don't remember if I know at some point there was a time when we had a conversation about it. But it was very fleeting. I mean, it wasn't in depth at all. It wasn't, hey, are you sure you want to stay in this situation? Really nothing along those lines. But he was definitely, I have a twin brother, by the way, and so he was definitely the first person that I let in on what was going on.
Okay, and tell us, as a man, what encourages you to speak out and share your story? Now, where does that comfort and that confidence come from?
I think it comes from two places. Number one, being more self-assured as a man, more confident, as a man and who I am. And so for this first part, that confidence plays in because I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of what I went through. I don't feel, emasculated at all. And so, I think it comes from just knowing who I am in Christ and just being comfortable with that. And I think the second part of the answer is I think it's relevant to speak out because men need to know that it's okay. It's okay to share what you've been through. I'm a firm believer that although in the male community, domestic violence, in the male community, vulnerability is viewed as a weakness. But I have come to understand and know that vulnerability is actually a strength. And not only is it a strength, but it reveals commonality. I mean, you never know who has been through what you've been through until you have the courage to share what you've been through. And so I think a lot of men need to know and realize that there are a lot of facets and faces to domestic violence, and it's okay to share what you've been through, because in my case, I realized that it affected me in more ways than I actually thought.
Yes, and what would you tell? You actually gave some insight in your response there, but is there anything else you would add or elaborate on to any man, any male, any age who may be watching this and going through abuse? They are the victims in the situation. They're keeping quiet, be it a stigma that, has them embarrassed, or, just the fear of people knowing the story. What would you tell them as far as breaking the silence and speaking out? How would you encourage them to do that?
I would encourage them, number one, that their courage begets courage. And so there are men going through what you've been through that need to hear your voice, need to hear your story. As ugly and as messed up and as embarrassing as you think your story is, it is a blessing to somebody. And that person will never get that blessing if you don't speak out. That's number one. Number two, I would also encourage them, because there are hidden effects of the domestic violence that they've been through. And a lot of times your confession is your healing. And the confession begins the process of healing, but you'll never get to that place if you don't actually confess and reveal what it is that you've been through. So there's another piece. There's another piece of this healing and this restoration that's necessary. And you'll never get to that place if you don't open your mouth and speak about what you've been through.
Thank you, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
We just heard empowering insight from Reverend Rodney Gray, a survivor of domestic violence. Reverend Gray's story has definitely raised a lot of great talking points concerning men and domestic abuse. Contributing to our topic today is Kenneth Baldwin, CEO and President of Discovery Consultants. Mr. Baldwin's training in addictions counseling, anger management, crisis intervention, mentoring, and life experience has equipped him with the tools necessary to empower individuals to make transformative steps to improve their quality of life. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for being here. So we'll get into some of those topics here. One of the issues that Reverend Gray addressed was that when his wife was hitting him, folks watched, but many people didn't see it as a big deal. If the roles were switched, the gender roles, it would have been a different story. Why do you think in the case where the man is in the place of being the person that's battered, why do you think that folks take it a bit lighter than if it was the woman?
Bad messaging, bad violence on any gender is incorrect. I think, we've been adopted a philosophy that it's okay for women to do it, and men are out of order when they do it. But I think, like he talked about violence, period. We should promote healthy relationships. That should be the mantra, promoting healthy relationships. And if we have one individual, female or male, promoting violence or propagating violence on one another, then we go away from that healthy messaging or healthy relationship. So I think that it's never a good place for anyone to promote violence.
And so when we talk about healthy relationships, that brings up the thought of healthy masculinity and the conversation that's happening right now around that. What are your thoughts on what healthy masculinity would look like, or what it could look like?
Healthy masculinity would be self-acceptance. There's so much messaging that men have received through their journey that have them having one direction, one focus, tunnel vision, that men are strong, men are intimidators, men are aggressive. That constitutes being a man, and I think it's just wrong information. Wrong information, that men can be vulnerable, men can be sensitive, men can be in touch with their feminine side and still be, identified as a man. Healthy masculinity is, Reverend Gray talked about vulnerability, and I think that's a very important piece. Very important piece. Like he said, most people view it as a weakness, but it's definitely a strength, and it gives an opportunity for others and other men to be an example. Because it started, I think it starts at the infancy level. The training that boys and males receive about you have to be tough, you don't cry, somebody hit you, somebody say something you don't like, then this is what you do, these are the action steps you take. And poor upbringing, poor training. And I think we have to adopt new ways, new messaging when we are rearing our children. of what it takes to be a healthy man, you know, and you don't have to be those things that traditionally have been passed down from generation to generation.
So when your work with Discovery Consultants, and I know your mantra is helping people discover, uncover, and recover, right?
It is. How
would you apply that approach to what you just talked about and kind of redirecting that bad messaging?
With uncover, discover, and recover, you know, the mantra would be that uncover self-limiting beliefs, you know, that we have about ourselves. You know, that I'm not a sucker if I'm hurt, if she hurts me. I'm not a punk if she does this, and I have some feelings about it. Discovering ways to combat those feelings when we feel inadequate, or, you know, or unworthy or unloved, and you know, recovering from the process that I'm not those things. You know, that's somebody's external experience or definition of me, and it doesn't have to be internal. Yeah.
This is a very important topic, and I think that we're hearing it come up a lot more as men are starting to speak out. Can you give us, give the parents at home, how can that conversation start as they're raising their boys to men and helping them to understand how to speak to their young boys and to keep that balance and helping them to understand that you can be a man and, as you said, be vulnerable or be in touch with your feminine side?
I was having a discussion earlier prior to coming in the room. You know, one of the things is that the parents have to possess that information as well. Not every home has that information. You know, not every woman or man has that in the home to give to their child. So it has to be a national, global messaging that men can be sensitive. Men hurt, men cry, boys cry, you know, just starts at the early stage. But if it's not, if the parent doesn't have it, surely they couldn't pass it down and rear their child. So I would ask them to invest in themselves, to look at what a healthy relationship is for themselves.
Yes.
So they would be in a position to provide that information to their seeds.
We're going to ask you to do something very special because this conversation is all about the folks at home. Can you just look right into our camera and give the viewers at home an idea of the next step they can take, no matter where they stand in the conversation, no matter what in order to be a part of the solution?
The next step would be self-examination. Where do I stand in the fight against domestic violence? Am I for it? Am I opposed to it? If I'm for it, you know, why am I for it? If I'm opposed to it, what steps am I going to take inside myself first, and then inside the home to fight against this vicious cycle, and develop and acquire tools and employ tools that are healthy coping skills when things discord goes on in intimate partnerships. Or partnerships with children to mom, children to dad, employees, co-workers. Where did I stand at that? And what is healthy for me? And what promotes peace?
Wonderful. We appreciate that. We're going to keep this conversation going past this episode, so we'll have to invite you back. Thank you so much for the insight, Kenny. We thank you all for joining us today. To connect with Kenny, please visit discoveryconsultants.biz to get more information. Also, find out more information as far as what FCC is doing at fccpg.org. We thank you for tuning in. As we always say, if you or someone you know needs help, dial 211. We are here for you. You've been watching Chats for Change. Get on YouTube, hit the subscribe button at Chats for Change TV, and we will see you next time.